If needlework is your passion, whether you're stitching by hand, machine, or mixing it all up, you're going to want to hear about the Mr. X Stitch Contemporary Needlework Prize 2025. This prize celebrates the best in modern stitch, and it's open to creatives from all around the world, whether you're a student or an emerging artist or a seasoned professional. And the best part, you don't have to send your work anywhere. Just upload high-resolution images to a private folder we will send you after you enter. You can enter more than one category, for instance, hand embroidery and 3D textiles. Just grab an entry for each one. And if you've got a student ID, you can get 50% off the entry price as well. The deadline for entering is 30th of June 2025, and entries are now open at xstitchmag.com/prize-entry. Thanks to our brilliant sponsors, Bookmarked Hub by Search Press and David and Charles, and the legends at Lowry Workstands. If you've got the stitch bug, this is your time. Show us what you've got. Enter the prize now. Visit xstitchmag.com/prize-entry to get your ticket today.
Welcome to NeedleXChange, conversations on the art of thread. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of NeedleXChange. Today I'm talking with Emma Homent. Emma, also known as the Maker's Mark, is a needlepoint designer and craft connector. Her book, Needlepoint, a modern stitch dictionary, has over 100 creative stitch types and is a terrific addition to your stitching library. Very recommended. Emma's always been crafty, but it was about 10 years ago when her passion for needlework intersected with her experience as a photography agent, and the Maker's Marks brand was born. Since then, as well as creating designs that hit that sweet spot of modern nostalgia, Emma's been an advocate for contemporary needlework and for the value of creative collaboration. I've known Emma since the early days, and we have a great chat that covers topics like licensing, how to make good craft books, and our shared passion for the kids show Bluey. Hope you enjoy the show. I've got some notes somewhere. So go on then. So tell me about Bluey then. Come on, because we can talk an hour about Bluey. I tell you. I swear.
I love it. No, my friend Amanda got me into it, and she just said it was just an absolute pure piece of joy, and that I should watch it. And I am like deep into Bluey now. I've got it in my calendar when the new episodes are coming onto Disney Plus.
Do you remember when what your first episode was?
I started from the beginning because it was all on Disney Plus, you see. So it wasn't like randomly jumping into Bluey. It was like I chronologically went through it.
My first episode was Granny's, and I saw that and I was like, what's going on there? My favourite episode is Sleepy Time. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Yeah.
Have you seen that one? It hits you hard because so this is the thing, right? Before, like when we first met, Christ knows when that was, like a decade ago, whatever. I didn't have any kids. I was emotionally
15 years ago.
15 years ago. Shit. I was just emotionally bereft or emotionally numb and just a bonehead and all that, you know. Now you become a parent and it unlocks all this stuff. So now I watch Sleepy Time, and because there's that bit where it's like rousing music of like Whole Planet Suite and like, I'll always love you, even if I'm away. And I'm just sitting there and I'm just like, that's so nice. And I've watched it about 20 times, and every time the kids are just like, Daddy, should we watch Sleepy Time? I'm like, no, I don't need to cry right now. But that's what happens. And then apologies to anybody listening. They've come out in Australia, and I use technological solutions to make sure that I could watch them in Australia and possibly even download them in Australia. So I have seen all of them. The last one, what was it? Season 3, episode 48, with Rusty playing cricket, came out about 3 weeks ago, and that was the last one for a long time now. But they're so good. They're so good. There's one called Onesies, which will come out over here at some point. And it's about like, so Bingo and Bluey get given some onesies by their auntie, Chili's sister. And the onesies, when Bingo wears hers, it turns her into a cheetah and she goes a bit mad and she's always like a
Yeah.
leopard and stuff. And Bluey wants to wear that one, but her mum's like, it just doesn't fit you. And sometimes when things just don't fit you, you have to learn to deal with that. But this is also a story that they're talking about Chili's sister, who clearly wants to have kids, can't have kids. That's why she doesn't see the family very often. So there's this bit where she's like lying on the ground looking at Bingo playing, and they put that over, and you're just like, oh my God, I've just gone again.
This is the thing about Bluey. I think people think, oh, it's just a kids show. And it's like, no, it really gets you in the feels. Sometimes it's like pure joy and just you're in hysterics. And other times, like it probably gets you.
I've got so many parenting tips from it. There's one called Flat Pack where have you seen Flat Pack? They're building a garden swing. And at the same time, they managed to chart the whole story of evolution from like tiny fish all the way through to future scenarios. And it's a metaphor for how we consider our own existence. And when we return back to our own like inheritance and stuff. And again, you're just like, oh my God.
I'm just waiting for people to like write their theses on
They
Bluey.
will, won't they?
They will for sure.
I could probably do it. I probably should do it. Amazing. So you think we 15 years?
I think it's been about 15 years, yeah.
When did we first meet?
We met at one of the stitching shows. I think it was Olympia. So that already dates it because they don't do it at Olympia anymore.
Yeah. You and the tailor. Were you doing the book? Were you doing book stuff? I just got this
so
memory of us having a meeting in a restaurant talking about book stuff.
We did. So I was a photographer's agent and I worked a lot in publishing.
Yeah.
So it was while you were doing your first book. So whenever your first book came out.
2011?
Yeah.
2012 maybe? Maybe earlier than that. 2010 actually, I think. Push Stitchery, available on Amazon. It's out of stock. It's a good book.
It's a good book. So we chatted about that.
And you were like...
You, me, and there were two other people went to a restaurant and we were chatting about books and magazines, and it was just when Molly Makes had first come out.
That might have been
it was
Perry
Savvy
Lewis,
Crafter.
maybe? Oh, Charlie Morby, yeah, because obviously
yes.
she was the editor of Cross Stitcher at the time.
Yep.
Shout out to Charlie.
And I can't remember the other girl's name. There was another girl. She brought out lots of books and she used to write craft stuff for The Guardian, but I can't remember her name.
Perry Lewis.
Perry Lewis, there you go.
Yeah, who now does Mastered. She's the CEO of that. Look how far we've all come. Look how completely different we are. Some people will look back on that that meeting as the beginning of something.
Yeah.
I've forgotten it, so clearly I'm not looking back on it like that. Or something, but wow. And you were like craft adjacent. Not to say that you weren't a crafter, but you mean you weren't even thinking about being Maker's Mark, then were you?
No, I wasn't. No, I'd always stitched. My mum taught me how to do needlepoint and cross stitch when I was about 6 years old. So I'd always been stitching, but at that point I was just buying everyone's kits and not doing any of my own stuff.
And then is it fair to say you discovered Emily Peacock and that definitely changed something?
It did. It woke something up in me really a little bit, because I think I'd got to a point where there's only so many pictures of kittens you can do and flowery patterns. And then I saw Emily's kits and it was like a little light bulb going off in my head really. I was like, oh, it can be different. You can have typography and amazing colours, and it was just really inspiring. Her work was such a kind of rocket ship out amongst all the other very, very boring kits that were out there. So it kind of got me thinking differently. And I had an illustrator friend of mine, Ollie Frapp, who did beautiful typography pieces. And I contacted him and said, oh, can we work on something together? And that was just a bit of fun. That wasn't with a view to kind of do anything with it. So I started working on that with him. And then Emily, bless her, was like, oh, you should do this. You should kind of make kits and things. And I was like, oh, yeah, that would be lovely. And then just pushed that thought deep down inside me and didn't revisit it for probably like 10 years or so.
Yeah. And then what made you revisit it? What was the tipping point?
It was being at another knit and stitch event. It was really weird. So years before, I had been helping Emily out on her stand at another one of those events. all of those events seem to be like the catalyst of everything, don't they? So I was helping her at her stand. A woman came and chatted to us, and she was talking about her life as a scientist and how actually she really loved doing needlepoint and cross stitch, and actually, you know, she should start going into that. And I sat there and I cheerleaded her along with Emily, like, yeah, you should totally do that. If that's what your heart's telling you to do, you should do it. So I gave all this advice to someone else, should have been listening to it for myself. And then fast forward years, and that woman came up and spoke to us and said, I don't know if you remember this conversation. And it was Emma from Anne's Orchard.
Yeah, potato scientist turned needlepoint legend.
So she'd taken all of that stuff on board, and kind of gone off and done this. And I just looked at it and I just thought, oh, I'm a little bit jealous. Like, I wish I'd done that.
Yeah.
And I thought, actually, maybe now is the time. And then Emily gave me a massive kick up the arse, as she's so good at doing. So I just thought, right, now's the time. I've got to stop making excuses. So I started noodling about with ideas. I had one idea in particular that I really wanted to do, which was a take on the fortune teller fish. I realized that my brain saw things in needlepoint. Like, I see pictures and go, oh, that would look amazing. And it kind of puts it through a needlepoint filter, I guess. So I contacted the parent company who has made fortune teller fish for like over 100 years. And I think they thought I was like a crazy craft lunatic. And they gave me permission. They were like, yeah, go for it, crazy craft lady.
Yeah. We'll never hear from her again.
Yeah, exactly, that mad lady. And I think that kind of, you know, their permission kind of gave me a bigger kind of universal permission to actually do it. So I started designing that and never stopped since.
How so when you started, it's quite hard when you start a thing, isn't it? Because you can look back now and go, I can see how far I've come. But did you know where you were at when you started? Did you know what your flavor was going to be? Because you consumed a lot, and you've seen people like Emily, and you've seen, you know what good stuff looks like. And I think that was the thing with Emily, was hers was like, it's not necessarily a breath of fresh air. It was like a breath of good air. It was like she was taking tradition and making it good again, which people had sort of given up on doing. So did you know where you were at when you started?
I think so, a little bit. A lot of my influences at the time, I was in a kind of creative business group called the Indie Roller Coaster. And I'd made a lot of friends through there who were illustrators and different types of creatives. And we all had a certain sort of vibe. I think, you know, birds of a feather flock together, really. So we all liked similar sort of clothes, and a lot of us dyed our hair pink. And it was kind of like, you find your tribe. So we all had a kind of similar aesthetic and things as well. And I think that influenced me a little bit. And my design eye started to emerge from that, really. So a lot of my early collaborations are with people from that group. And it kind of dictated a little bit what I like and what I was happy to show that I like as well. So very 80s, 90s nostalgia vibes. And I think pretty much what I was designing at the start is the sort of vibe that I'm still designing now, except now there's a lot more decorative stitches that come into play.
Yeah, we'll get to decorative stitches in a bit. That's interesting though, isn't it? Because there's been a theme. I mean, whenever you've done a pattern for X Stitch, the game-changing cross stitch magazine, there's been that like happy nostalgia, like that kind of familiarity. And I think that always plays well. In a weird way, it's kind of what people are doing when they do Morris Minors, isn't it? It's like a modern happy nostalgia, like we said before, like done well though, like done quite nicely. The other curious thing I always think about you, though, is you and I are quite similar, I think, because like I started out as a designer. I don't even call myself a designer now personally because I don't put in the effort. But you're more than that. And as we said, you know, you gave Emma Pavia loads of advice. You've always been that person. You're always doing these other side projects. So you're not just a designer. It's more like you're a sort of enabler. Or I'm sure once I heard a thing called like an animateur. You're an animateur because you just get other people going as much as anything. That seems to be quite intrinsic to you.
Yeah, I think that's years of being an agent and going to photography college and stuff as well. We were very it was drilled into us to cheerlead each other and support each other and share work. And I'm a very good puzzle solver. I like puzzle solving, and I think I see people and their ideas in that way. They're puzzles to be solved. So if I see something that someone could be doing, I tell them. I wouldn't just sit there and say nothing and go, oh, they can all fail. I want everyone to be enjoying themselves and making the most out of their creativity and stuff. And I know how to get people to that place. So, I was an excellent agent when I was an agent. I was very good at helping people find their path and find their way. And I still like to do that. I can't help myself.
Yeah, it's interesting
Meddling.
because you came out with a good strong brand when you started, and it feels to me like that's something like sometimes people miss. Like from your experience, what are the things that people they go, oh, I want to be a cross stitch designer, or I want to be a needlepoint designer, or I just want to be a craft, a craft retailer of some respect. Where do you think
Yeah.
what are the simple mistakes people make?
Do you know what I see so often is people changing their brand names?
Right.
That I see that a lot, like so often. They'll come out with something and it'll be, I don't know, it'll be a half thought that they had at the beginning, and actually as they start to develop, it doesn't represent them anymore.
Mm.
So they change and they either become their name, whereas before they were, whiskers and kittens or something like that. It's always something and something, isn't it?
Yeah.
So many brand names are something and something. um, and the things that they identified with at the start are not what they identify with now. And so they're like, oh, well, I'm just going to be Joe Blogg's Studio now, or Joe Blogg's Designs, or yeah, I think that seems to be the thing. I don't think people spend the time getting to the heart of what they love about why they're doing it.
Mm.
Like for me,
Do
I
you think?
really put a lot of thought into that. I really thought about what I was doing it for, what I wanted from it. The name The Maker's Marks comes from my want to collaborate with people. It's not everything. It's not every single one of my designs is a collaboration, but I'd say it's about 50-50. But I love collaborating with other creatives. I think you get some really gorgeous results when you've got different creative brains meeting on a project. And so the Maker's Marks was about my mark making and designers that I work with, illustrators that I work with, and the customers as well, the people who buy my kits. And so all three of us kind of become part of the making of the one thing. So it was like everyone's marks together. And that was something I thought about a lot at the beginning, and it stayed intrinsic to what I'm about. But I think that's the thing. I think people don't drill down to what they're doing it for.
Yeah, they just come out and go, I'm going to make these patterns. Do you think people realize, like one of the things I've realized in the 500 years I've been doing this now is you kind of have to get all the skills as well. And that's what's quite painful is you don't realize you can go, oh, I like cross stitch. I'm going to make some patterns and bang them out on Etsy.
Yeah.
But I think you've got to be unnaive. What's the word? I don't know. You can't be naive about it because you are going to have to learn to do admin, finance,
Yeah,
marketing,
it's
blah,
a
blah, blah,
lot
blah,
of
blah.
hat wearing. It's a lot of multidiscipline hat wearing. And I think that it would probably put most people off if
Yeah.
they thought about that too much at the beginning. And I think that's probably why you see a lot of designers and kind of kit makers popping up and then disappearing again. Their Etsy shops suddenly go on indefinite hiatus because
Yeah.
it's a lot and it gets really overwhelming.
I found that quite sad. Sometimes I'll go back and edit an old post from Mr. X Stitch from like 2011 and go, oh, like they're
Yeah,
not there anymore. Or a little
I
while
know.
ago, I found someone. It was the guy who was featured in the first issue of X Stitch, Craft in 1980. He passed away. I was like,
Oh,
oh,
what?
that's a shame. But yeah, you're right. And I think the thing is people, you have to love it. I always think about
Yeah,
stand-up comedians are like successful because stand-up comedian is the only thing they could do, and so it's what they do. It's like a drive in
yeah.
them, and I think it has to be kind of similar. You've got to love the process of what you're doing because you're going to be in it for the rest of your life if you're lucky, if you're
And
successful.
I think it can be very isolating as well sometimes. I think I think creative people generally need other creative people. We feed off the energy of each other. And actually, I think when you can set up a business, it can be very, very lonely. And actually, you need a community.
Yeah.
And I think if a lot of those people had a community kind of like-minded people around them, because I think that's the important thing. I think you need people with the same problems that they're coming up against, the same hurdles. And I think if they had potentially had community around them a bit more, then maybe they would still be going.
Do you find that I get this with Mary, where I'll try and explain. She'll be like, "What have you been up to today?" And I'll try and explain it to her, and she'll get a glazed look in her eyes about 3 seconds because I'm talking about like email marketing, or I'm talking about like, doing some design work. I think that's the thing, isn't it? You need people who can go, "Oh yeah, I do actually know what you mean."
Yeah.
Just to like triangulate your own position sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. It's super important. It's something that I've always known was important. And I think having gone through the art school process, and being used to workshopping ideas and stuff, I miss when I don't have that sort of thing. Last year, myself and Emily Peacock created a group called Albion.
Mm-hmm.
It's
a good
the
name.
Yeah, it's I can't remember what it all stands for. Emily went completely wild on it. It's like the Outstanding League of the Amazing League of
Okay.
Independent somethings and
I
something
just
and
thought
something.
it meant you were all English.
There is that as well.
Right.
It is.
Okay.
It's about needlepoint design coming out of this country, but yeah, she has attached words to each letter to make
Okay.
her sound like superheroes.
Right. Brilliant.
Uh,
That would explain the wearing your pants on the outside as well. I
yeah.
saw that. It's good
Does it all
promo.
make sense to you now? Yeah.
Now it does. Yeah.
So we set up that group for that. We wanted community. We wanted to be able to share problems with each other and cheer each other on. And we have a constant chat thread going. And it can be really boring stuff that we talk about, like new suppliers for printing, or stupid little things, codes for sending stuff abroad. But it's just being able to talk to someone else who's in that same weird niche bubble as yourself is so brilliant.
It's weird as well, particularly. I think you and I are both lucky in that we've got pseudonyms, so you can slightly hide yourself behind them. But when you are like the brand, and then you've got followers on Instagram or a Facebook page, then they get this false version of you, don't you? And sometimes you
Yeah.
need that place. I did an email newsletter a little while ago where it's just like, oh, things are a bit crap at the moment. And you need to be able to say that. And I wouldn't say it to like public facing. It was like almost an internal thing. But you need to be able to be honest, don't you? Because you can't get by on bluster.
Yeah, safe spaces.
You
need them.
And then you've also got our common thread as well.
So that actually folded. Our common thread, it was one of the reasons we set up the group, really, in replacement. But our common thread was a global group set up by the amazing Jenny Henry and Brooke Alexander.
Out to Jenny. Shout out to Brooke.
Yeah, Brooke McGowan from Thorn Alexander, sorry. And yeah, they were brilliant. Brilliant. Brought people from the UK, from Ireland, Australia, Canada, America, Portugal. It brought lots of different people together, and that was exciting to see what people were doing in different countries. But it almost became too big for them to manage, really, alongside everything else. So that group disappeared. So we needed something in place of it.
But maybe that's part of the thing. Maybe when you've got a global group, like, so one of my observations about the needlecraft sector is that you get big companies and they're catering to the whole world at once, so they have to kind of just go down the middle of the road because that's a road that everyone's driving on. They can't really, because of the way they're set up, they can't have these unique flavors or vernaculars that they need. And sometimes it's the same with these kind of groups, isn't it? Because like you say, you want to be able to talk about the challenges of Brexit and how it impacts your ability to ship goods abroad. And people in America aren't going to be savvy to that. So it's almost like, it's no disrespect to that, but sometimes you do need to like drill down those things, don't you, to get better value.
Yeah, I think as good as groups are, the bigger they get, the more complicated they get as well.
They have to be kind of formalized, isn't it? You almost have to like go, right, everyone's got 5 minutes, because otherwise we're going to be here all day.
Yeah, exactly. It gets a bit woolly otherwise.
Yeah, we had a thing in roller derby, because I used to be involved in roller derby. In fact, yeah, when we knew each other.
Yeah, I remember.
And
yeah, that was kind of like we did a tournament once with like 6 teams one year called the End of the World Series, which is brilliant. Then we did a slightly larger one. And then around the time that I left, and these two facts aren't connected, but it started getting bigger, and it was almost like then they were having like divisions and stuff like that. And that was almost too much for the infrastructure to handle,
Yeah.
because it was like teams could compete, but then other ones couldn't. And suddenly there were like barriers to entry and all of those sorts of things. And then it sort of defeats the object of what it's trying to achieve in the first place.
Yeah.
Don't know where the tipping point is there really, but let's talk about your so you said you've been a crafter for as long as you can remember, right? Tell me about your crafty childhood and stuff.
So I was a super hyperactive kid.
Unlike now when you're a super hyperactive adult.
I know, but I'm calmer now than I was then. Can you imagine the nightmare I was as a child?
You would have picked on me, I'm sure.
Oh, I wouldn't. No, I was super nice. Like I was everyone's friend. I was a really nice kid, but I just had too much energy. So I was a super hyperactive kid, but also had a heart condition. So it was not a very good combination.
Is that like a reset button? Like if you got too excited, you just have to shut down for a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it did actually, because my heart used to run too fast. I had an extra electrical pathway on it.
Wow.
So yeah, they did have to basically. I won't go into detail because it doesn't sound very pleasant, but it was basically like a heart reboot anytime I had an attack. So my mum, to try and chill me out, would give me craft kits. And she used to do a lot. She used to stitch a lot of the ermine kits, and she had lots of Kay Fassett books around the house. So I grew up with those as kind of my picture books. And I just loved it because, as well as being super hyperactive, I am an absolute perfectionist and I like to get stuff done. So there with the kit, it was a purpose and it was a thing to do. So I would just sit and quite merrily stitch. And I've seen my early stitching. It is amazing. I was good. Very perfect stitch tension at age 7.
But like you say, then you can finish it, which sometimes that's a satisfaction, isn't it? And I think that's always been one of the things, like from a mental health standpoint, that's good about stitching is you can chalk up lots of wins. If you finish a section of colour, you can go, I finished that. That's a successful goal achieved. And I remember when I was researching the book, it was quite funny to understand that and go, yeah, every single stitch can be classed as a win, but also you can go, I finished a thing, rather than the endless drift of whatever.
The satisfaction of that is absolutely brilliant, but also it's escapism as well, isn't it? You switch off your brain a little bit, you've got something to focus in on, so all the noise disappears, the external noise disappears, and you focus and breathe with what you're doing, which is hugely beneficial.
Do you still do a lot of stitching yourself now?
Yeah, I'm never not stitching. So if I'm not working on one of the many different designs that I'm working on for new collection stuff, I have what I call my stitch holidays, where I buy other people's kits and then I stitch those.
Yeah.
And that's time off for me. I'm like, oh, lovely.
Who are the designers that you buy kits from at the moment? Who's floating your boat?
At the moment, I've got 2 Emily Peacock kits on the go. I've got her Agatha Christie with Appletons, so I'm a massive Agatha Christie fan. And I'm also doing the ridiculously large trapeze design from her book. And I've got a Hannah Bass Blooming Marvellous kit. And that is waiting to be stitched. That is the next one on my stitch list.
I think Hannah is my only official whip, in that I'm doing an Amsterdam kit that I bought for her that will soon be celebrating its 10th birthday. So I really need to get it finished.
Well, they take as long as they take. Sometimes you get through them quickly, and sometimes they sit there like an old friend waiting for you to pick it up again for 5 minutes. And that's fine. There is no shame in that. And before that, I was doing the Art Deco Diver by Thread and Mercury, which is beautiful. It's got gorgeous colours on it. Really, really lovely.
Yeah, that was a good one, wasn't it? Are there people that you like who do quite small ones? Because I feel like one of the challenges in Needlepoint, one of the curiosities, is its scale. It's always quite big.
Yeah, I think most of us try and do small kits now as well. I think historically in this country, it's all been very cushion heavy. It's all been pieces that you would imagine would finish into a cushion, although we're having a big conversation at the moment about finishing items into different things. And that's something that they're all over in the States, but actually we're not very good at encouraging people to do here. So we're all making a big push at the moment to change that.
What
Whether
are the
it's
things?
well, like little kits. So I'm wearing today one of the earring kits that I've got. So I've got 3 different earring kits that feature a decorative stitch, and then you stitch them, and it's a pair of earrings. Or in the book, everything that's in the book, there's 10 projects in the book. They all finish into different things. So there's a plant holder, there's a bookmark, there's actually the plant holder. I've seen people in the States stitch that piece and then turn it into a bag, because there's a lot of acrylic bags you can get that are really good for putting needlepoint panels in.
You've got a glasses holder. You've got a purse.
Glasses, yeah.
You've got one in a floating frame.
A zip pouch, yes. Framing
Pencil
things.
pot.
Pencil pot, yes.
Let's talk about the book.
Make it, you can stitch it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So let's talk about the book. Tell me, how did the book come to be?
So, with a view to try and make myself a little bit more regular on my Instagram account, I thought I needed a regular feature. And it coincided with me becoming dangerously obsessed with decorative stitches and the variety thereof. And also it was something that people weren't really talking about over here. You know, we're used to our needlepoint kits, which we used to call tapestry kits, being that kind of simple half a cross stitch.
Tent stitch?
Which, pardon?
Do you call it tent stitch? I mean,
Tent
you've got all the
stitch, yeah.
names now, so I'm just checking that I'm correct.
Yeah, the tent stitch, continental and basket weave all look the same from the front, but they're worked slightly differently, the mechanics of them, as you go in and out of the canvas. But from the top, they're all the same. So they're all a half cross stitch, but they're just worked slightly differently. So that's what we used to do, and that's great. And a lot of people still stitch like that. But I started to see a lot of the decorative stitches that a lot of designers and stitchers were using in the States. And I loved the look of them. I loved the texture and the playing that you can do with different areas, and, you know, emulating different shapes and sheens on items. So I started dabbling with those, and I thought, well, why don't I start sharing the ones that I'm finding and having a go at? So I created Stitch Mondays, which is the hashtag, and every Monday I share a different needlepoint stitch. And I haven't run out yet. There are thousands of them. It's crazy. So I started doing that, and I do them in kind of fresh, bright colours, which appeals to people. So it's a bit of a stitchy sweet shop. And a publisher saw them, had been thinking about doing an idea of doing some sort of needlepoint Bible. And then they contacted me and said, do you want to do it with us?
And lo, Needlepoint, a modern stitch directory, over 100 creative stitches and techniques for tapestry and embroidery was born. And I memorized that title. I'm definitely not holding the book in my hands and reading it. Definitely.
Yeah,
it's a lovely book. Like, it's, you know, it's been a while. It's taken me a while to get to see it. There are many things I love about it. Shall I tell you what I love?
Yes.
I love
Tell
the
me
different
the nice
colours.
things,
I
please.
love the design. I
Yeah.
love the splodges. It's a lot of
Yeah,
splodges.
splodges
Was that
are
your
good.
choice?
That was me and the art director.
Yeah, splodges are good, and the splodges have got sufficient variety that you're not going to go, oh, that was very 2022 splodges, you know, because there's always a risk of that, isn't there?
Yeah.
I like the variety of stitches. I like the use of typography because I'm nerdy like that. I also think it functions really, really well as a technical manual, because I think the thing is with my own book, Mr. X Stitch Guide to Cross Stitch, available from Amazon and all good charity shops. A cross stitch book and a pattern has to be a technical manual. It has to be a thing that people follow. And I've seen plenty of examples where these things have gone wrong. I can think of 2 classic examples. And do you know what? I'm going to name check them because, sod it, there was one called Ed Hardy Cross Stitch. Ed Hardy, excellent tattoo designer. And there was recently one called Cross Stitch Like a Queen. And the problem is, these are both fantastic ideas for books, but the book companies don't get people who do cross stitch to help them make the books. And so they fail as technical manuals. Like Cross Stitch as a Queen, I was really angry about, because a brilliant opportunity to do like drag culture inspired cross stitch, and the book fails as a cross stitch book because the patterns are poorly thought out, the legends are poorly done. So it's not a technical manual at all. It's just a missed opportunity.
I think as well, people don't people think about how they process information, and they don't stop to think that other people might process information in a different way.
Mm.
Because people learn in lots of different ways. You have people who learn from looking, people who learn from listening, people who learn from reading, and those brain processes are all completely different. And so it's really important to cover all bases for people so that you're not excluding anyone or trying not to exclude anyone in the enjoyment and the learning from your book. And it is essentially, it's a reference book. So it was really important that each of the stitches in there had a picture of what the stitch actually looks like, which, as far as I know, that's not really very common at all in stitch
Mm.
books. It baffles me.
Yeah.
They rely on the chart, they rely on a graphic, which
Mm.
is fine to a certain extent, and that's important to have. But I think if you're making choices about what you want to put on your canvas, you want to see the texture, you want to see what it looks like in tapestry wool. So we had the coloured pictures, we had a coloured graph, and written instructions as well. And I've had loads of compliments about that because it's accessible.
Yeah, and the pictures are really big. And I think the thing is, again, there's always that risk where people do decorative stitches where they think, I need to, I don't know, they'll put 20 on a page and they'll sacrifice the scale and the detail. Whereas you've got one on a page and you can see
Yeah.
it stitched and you can see the illustration. And like you say, you can see the instructions and the typography looks sound. And
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. And there's been a few like Bible-y books that I've read lately. There's one called Hooktionary by someone called Brenda KB Anderson, which is lots of like
Mhm.
intarsia crochet patterns. And yeah, they need to function as a successful reference book, like you say. And I mean, you've smashed it. You smashed it on this one.
Thank you.
It's done a great job, and I think that's quite a nice legacy. It's the same with my book. If I never do another book again, I don't really mind because I've done the Mr. X Stitch Guide to Cross Stitch, available from Amazon and all good charity shops. And if I never do another book again, I'm pretty happy. When you were
I
doing the book,
really want to do another book though.
do you?
Yeah.
What's the next one then?
Well, I want to do another one with more stitches in because I've got
Right.
tons more that I want to play around with, but I want one that focuses more on how you make choices. Like, so you would look at a canvas and to try and help people get a bit of confidence on how to make the choices for certain areas.
Interesting.
And I want to drill down into that.
I mean, because one of the things you said actually was the sheen of the stitches, and I think the interesting thing with decorative stitches is they provide texture and they give you the opportunity to create form on flatness.
Yeah. Which is exciting, and I don't think people think about that. I think when you've just been doing tent stitches for such a long time, you're used to just the colouring element, and you don't think about the texture so much because it's about keeping it nice and flat and neat. Whereas actually there's a lot you can do with playing with the texture and also having bits of naked canvas as well. I'm a real big fan of stitches that are a bit more open, so you see bits of the canvas poking through, and that works really well if you've got painted or printed canvases and you can play with the colors there as well. I think that's really good fun. I think once people start to have a bit of a play with that stuff, it actually becomes quite addictive, and it's quite fun to bring some of your own creativity to a kit. It's another way that stitchers can put their own spin on something. You could have 10 people doing the same kit, but if they're all doing different decorative stitches, the finished piece will look wildly different. And that's quite exciting. I think that's quite a lovely enabling thing for them to bring their own creativity to it.
It gives
I
them
get
an
a lot of people
opportunity.
sliding into my DMs asking me for stitch recommendations on stuff as well, which I love.
Which is one of the best ways of people sliding into anyone's DMs anyway. Hey, baby,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
looking for a
want.
decorative stitch to achieve a tree-like structure.
Yeah.
But I love that because that's the thing is like when you start out stitching, it's quite easy to just follow patterns. You need to wrap your head around it to follow patterns.
Totally.
But after a while, if you get that yearning to make your own art, take it in your own direction, then these are quite quick wins, aren't they?
Yeah.
And it just sets people off down a path.
Yeah, completely. And I think it's a nice thing when you are, if you're part of like a stitch club, it's quite a nice thing to go to your stitch club with the book and start encouraging other people to do the same thing who are maybe a little bit earlier on in the journey. I think it's a nice like, oh, look what I tried out. Have you given this one a go yet? There's something kind of quite communal about it, I think.
I got a lot of value for the while when I was living in Milton Keynes, and I used to go to the Embroiderers Guild meetings because I learnt stuff I wouldn't have sought to learn.
Mm,
And I think that's where you evolve in new directions, isn't it? If you go and do
yeah.
stuff you never thought you'd try and do before. And again, your book affords that opportunity, doesn't it?
Yeah, I get loads of comments on Instagram where people are like, "Oh, that's really interesting, that stitch. I've never seen that one before. I'm going to go off and try it." And it's, yeah, I think it's the encouragement. You kind of sometimes need to see it to do it.
Is there
So
a
it's
sort of
quite,
a flow to the stitches? Like, so when you were planning the book or when you were doing your Stitch Mondays,
yeah.
did you start with one and then that led you to another and that led you to another? Or did you then go and look in a reference book from like the 1950s and jam in something sideways? Or
No, I didn't. I didn't pull out any old books. It's more things that I've seen over time that I've bookmarked, going, "Oh, I've got to try that at some point." And in terms of what I share on Instagram, I try not to have too many similar stitches at a time. So I try and across the month have a little bit of variety. And in the book, I wanted to make sure like all the basics were in there. So you've got the 3 different types of tent stitch and you've got cross stitch. And I wanted to build up to the more kind of blousy road stitches and things like that. But it was basically ones that I really liked that gave enough variety in 100 stitches.
does that mean
And
your
I ended
next
up
book will be
inventing
ones
as well.
you invented a stitch?
Yeah,
Go
I'm
on.
fancy. Yeah, I invented the Rhodes cloud stitch.
Tell us about it.
So the Rhodes stitches work in a kind of clockwise sort of layering effect. So you get a really, really 3D stitch. So you can have Rhodes octagons that look like little raised dots and Rhodes hearts. And I was doing a project for the book with a cloud, and I thought, oh, I could use some of the Rhodes stitches. And then I started doing 2 Rhodes octagons and then made a fan shape in the middle and realized I'd invented a totally new stitch.
Exciting.
It is fancy, very exciting.
I was going to say, do you have any favourite stitches? I'm guessing the one you invented is up there.
Yeah, no, that's definitely up there. It's definitely up there because I was so proud of myself and also suddenly realized, oh, you can invent stitches. That's
Is it
exciting.
true you have to tell the king that you've invented a new stitch? Has
Of
to be
course,
officially
yeah.
registered.
But you have to send it via Peacock.
Nice.
It's
And not
really,
Emily
it's really
Peacock, any
elaborate.
other Peacock. Yeah.
No, other peacocks, yeah.
No, you have to send it via Emily Peacock. She's the
Yeah,
gatekeeper.
why she's so busy all the time. Yeah, no, it's you just kind of invent it and tell people.
Any other hidden gem stitches that people ought to try because it
I
might be.
really love woven stitch, the woven plait stitch. That's really gorgeous. That's in the book. It gives, as you would imagine, a woven effect, and you get a lot of coverage quite quickly, so it's very satisfying. It covers a big area quite quickly, gives a lot of texture. I'm using it on the cardigan bit of Agatha Christie, and it looks amazing. There's also a stitch called Kalim stitch that when you stitch it, it looks like knitting.
Okay.
And that's really clever.
Because I think there's something about is sometimes like when you make a pattern and stuff, sometimes it has to be nice for people to make, not the stitching, but just the sense of completion, the sense of achievement. And I think that's that thing. There'll be some stitches that seem quite simple, but when you make them, you're like, that's a really nice thing that I've just made at that point.
I think all of them, bizarrely, apart from possibly David's stitch, because that's really big and it loops under a lot of stuff, but they're all pretty simple. And I think because they look quite intimidating, because especially things like the road stitches, because they look super complicated and they're very big, but because everything's worked on a grid, it's really easy to work out. So similarly to when you're doing Bargello and you kind of have a holding line and then the rest of the pattern just flows really easily, it's the same thing with decorative stitches. Once you've got the foundation of a stitch in or a line of the stitches in, it's really easy just to whip through them quite quickly. So actually, even though it's super intimidating, I teach beginners classes and I teach things like the road stitches that look really scary. But actually, once you've started doing it and you realize, oh yeah, okay, it goes there, and then it just leads on to the next bit, onto the next bit. By the end of it, everyone thinks they're a needlepoint genius, which they are.
Which they are, yeah. I was just thinking about how in lace making they had
little songs that they would sing that would go
Mm.
along with the rhythm of making the lace. And I kind of wonder whether you end up with little tunes going through your head when you're making some of these, because there's a certain, presumably when you do some of the stitches, you have to do them in the same order to get the same effect. So you're always
Yeah,
doing these little, it's not as much like cross stitch can be quite mindless, can't it? Straight there,
yeah.
straight back, and that sort of thing. So I'd imagine these can be a bit more circular.
Yeah, they are a little bit more circular, but I think it's the same thing. You go into a muscle memory with it, really. Once you've repeated it a few times, I think you just start stitching it without thinking, really.
And
And
it's
it
5 hours later.
yeah, exactly. You've suddenly got a massive cushion. But yeah, it falls into place. It's weird how quickly your body kind of syncs up with it.
Yeah, I always liked lace makers because I thought they were very good at what I called it localized throwing, because a really good lace maker can just chuck a bobbin about a quarter of an inch, with
Yeah,
accuracy, and you'd see them go flying. It'd be like with their fingers. It was quite good. Do you
yeah,
feel a sense, because that's interesting then, because you said you didn't really look back at old reference books, but I always feel like when you make a Bible-y type book like this, you are
yeah.
drawing a mark in a historical context.
Yeah, and I mean there is a history of needlepoint in the book, and I talk about that stuff. I mean, like tent stitch is called tent stitch because it was found on Egyptian tents that the pharaohs and their slaves were making. So needlepoint is as old as civilization. So you can't help but draw on the history of it. And
Mm.
the thing is, with a lot of textiles and a lot of history of textiles, is that it is perishable and written records are perishable. So the origins of an awful lot of the history of textile based things are vanished.
Mm.
So we don't know necessarily who first ever stitched the first tent stitch or who came up with the first ever cross stitch.
Mm.
We don't know these things. And when you talk about the history of needlepoint, and I do mention it slightly in the book, it does become very Western in terms of its history and its recording, and it was taught in schools in the 1600s, and it the catalogue that we have of samplers and pieces that were recorded and saved tend to be things that have been recorded here and saved and put in museums, but potentially there is an awful lot in other civilizations and across other countries and things that was happening before us that we just don't know of. So it's really difficult to talk about the history of needlepoint and be accurate because it's been around for thousands of years.
And yet, weirdly, it's still got a longer, more visible history than a lot of stuff. Like
Yeah,
digital photography, all we need is
yeah,
one massive electronic wave, and all of that goes.
yep.
That's the thing that's funny, isn't it? Because we never know the true history, but weirdly, it gives us more of a sense of history than many other crafts.
Yeah, I mean, it is mad that the oldest recording of a needlepoint stitch is from Egyptian tombs.
Mm,
That's
yeah.
that's crazy. That's crazy.
Twists your melon, isn't it? Because to me, I remember. I think I was at the Ashmolean Museum many years ago, and I remember looking at like some. I think they were Chinese silk embroideries from like 935 BC or
Mm.
something or other, and just being like, "Huh." I'm like, I'm in that context now. It's kind of weird to just go.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
I think when you work in textile crafts as well, it really is. It really is. It's old. It's
Yeah.
so old. We needed clothes. You have creatures and fur and fluff and natural materials, and the oldest kind of recorded needles were bone based,
Hmm.
antler based bones and things like that. So it's something that's been needed for a long time. So
And it
it has
stands
the most ridiculously long history.
and it stands to reason that somewhere down the line people would have stitched things and then somebody would have gone, just
Yeah,
that and gone, I could stitch that a little bit nicer. And so it
yeah,
goes, and then suddenly they've done some kind of embellishment.
yeah. I think there will have been a tipping point where function was left behind and decoration became more important,
I
and
think we're
that's
at
when
that
you kind of
tipping point now, but that's another
yeah,
social conversation.
and that's kind of where you start getting kind of our stuff starts to emerge a bit more.
I was having a conversation recently about endangered crafts, and we were talking about coracle making, which is something that is at risk of being an extinct craft. And the Heritage Arts Council talk about extinct crafts as being there's
Mm.
nobody left to pass that information on to anybody else. So they have this register, and they have some crafts where it is like critically endangered. So there might be like 10 people in the country that are doing it and sharing it, and it gets like that. Coracle making is one of these ones, particularly the Irish version of it, that is at risk of becoming extinct. And coracles are like these little boats that people used to use to get across the water. So not ships,
Yeah.
but just like little round boats. And it turns out that they're like massively critical to the way that the spice trade worked and the way that people established communities in other
Mm.
countries. I don't know, 5,000, 10,000 years ago. And then you think it's got to this point now where nobody can be bothered to like teach it and make them, because what's the point? And then
Yeah.
I was thinking, you look at places like Machu Picchu and you look at these like ancient civilizations that have vanished, and everyone's like, I wonder what went on there then. And they probably had all this stuff, and then people
Yeah.
stopped doing it. And it almost feels like we're going through that situation now again, where people are losing the crafts that define their history. So they're losing that sense of history. And then at some point we implode in our own, I don't know, stupidity.
It's weird, isn't it? Because I think crafts, a lot of people see crafts as like a frivolous hobby.
Mm.
It's like a frivolous, it's a silly thing to do, crafts, but actually it's intrinsic to who we are as human beings.
Mm.
And I think that's why it's not just, the health benefits of crafts are tenfold. And when you sit down and make something with your hands, you instantly physically feel better, and it's brilliant for your mental well-being. And I think it's not just because of kind of repeat action and the calming element of that, and how repeat action matches with your breathing and your breathing starts to slow. I think there is something intrinsically in our DNA that calls back to times gone by, that it's such a fundamental part of who we are as human beings, but we don't really acknowledge that.
Mm.
Our civilization was moved forward by inventors, by craftspeople, by artisans. And yeah, unfortunately, as the recording of things and people passing on skills starts to disappear and things become endangered and extinct crafts, we lose touch with that stuff. But actually, when you sit down and start making, maybe we get these little echoes that come through.
I find it odd as well that for some reason people don't associate like cooking and baking and gardening as
Mm.
crafts,
Oh, but they're
and yet
totally
they are.
crafts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's bizarre, isn't it? Whether it's a marketing exercise or something, but I remember
Yeah.
like back in the days when I was like, I'm going to have a telly program. And
Mm.
people were like, no, but Kirsty does crafts. And I was like, oh, right. So
Mm.
that's like saying Jamie Oliver does cooking. And
Yeah.
but it was almost like this mindset of going, no, the whole of crafts just needs this one thing. And
Yeah,
yet
it's stupid.
everything is a craft, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah,
Bonkers.
making with your hands, that's important.
Hmm.
And that comes in lots of different forms.
Making marks.
Yes.
The other thing I wanted to ask, to go
Hmm.
right back to the start, was about you talked about you enjoy collaboration. And I
Yeah.
find it's an interesting one because as a maker, we often unwittingly collaborate with the people that buy our products. If you
Hmm.
like, there's a collaboration there, but it's not a very
Definitely.
intrinsic one. But I wondered what your observations are on the difference between you making something by yourself and then you collaborating.
Um, I I've got something at the moment where I'm working on a balloon letter alphabet with an illustrator friend of mine called Carla, who's Poppykins Illustrations. And every now and then with a design, you kind of hit a brick wall where you've stared at it too long and you can't really even see it properly anymore. And the nice thing with the collaboration is that when I get to that point, I can just send it over to her and go, what do you think? What do you see? And so she'll come back with comments and she'll see things that I am no longer able to see with the piece anymore.
Mm.
And that's lovely. It's the workshop element. So it kind of clears the fog a little bit and gives me a kickstart. And they're like, right, yeah, okay, cool. And then you go away and you tweak it and adjust it, and then you get the perfect design. And that's the bit of the collaboration that I love the most. It's being able to bounce off other people.
I read a book a little while ago because I like comics. Can't make comics, but I also like reading books about making comics. And there's a guy,
Mhm.
Brian Michael Bendis, who did a book, and he said when he writes a book, he's just writing the book for like one or two people. He's writing it for the artist and maybe someone else who helps there. And sometimes you think, oh, I've got to write a book for 100,000 people or whatever. But it's the collaboration between the writer and the artist is a critical thing. So how much time do you have to spend getting in sync with a collaborator? Like, what's that bit like? Because that's like the pre-work work, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so. I think I've always thought quite a lot before I've even approached someone. So I'll either have seen something that they've done that I desperately want to turn into needlepoint, or I'm so aware of their style that I know that what we can create together. So I have a really clear idea, so that when I approach someone, I'm going with a real plan in place. And obviously there's room within that plan for them to come up with their ideas and them to move things forward. So I feel like we're already a little bit in sync by the time that we've started the conversation, because like in my head I've already made us best friends.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. The other person's like, hi, stranger. And you're like, oh, man, I love you. And your
Yeah,
cats are
exactly.
brilliant. And I can't believe that holiday you had. And they'll be like, wow.
Yeah, no, in my head we're already besties.
But I mean, presumably, I guess once you fine tune, I think as well, is there something about like honest communication?
Mm. Yeah, definitely. You've got to be open and honest with those things and show your vulnerabilities and all the rest of it. So yeah, it's just, I don't know. I find it really easy to talk to people. So I've never found any of those sorts of approaches or the starting to work with someone bit difficult, because I'm open to whatever ideas that they've got. I'm really respectful of their work, I hope. So it's always just a really pleasant, lovely thing.
And you're not too hung up on yourself that if they criticize your thinking, you're going to be like, throw all your toys out the pram. Because I think that's part of
Oh,
the issue as well,
exactly.
isn't it?
Yeah, no, and generally I work with people who are really lovely, nice, warm, open, creative people as well. So I have an idea of who they are a little bit and their personalities. So there's generally no surprises. I think from my background being a photographer's agent, I know about licensing. I know about, using someone's work and the right way to go about approaching that stuff. So I think that helps as well, because I think sometimes for different artists, if someone approaches you and wants to do a collaboration, I think there can be a lot of fear in that sometimes, that you think you're going to be taken advantage of or it's not going to be done in the right way. But I think because I come with an understanding of how the licensing process works, I think that takes a lot of the fear out of it at the beginning for them as well.
Can you do licensing process 101 for us?
Yes.
Please.
So what now?
Yeah, go on. Just off the top of your head.
Now.
Nice and easy.
Okay. So in most countries, and definitely in this country, when anyone has created something, and the person is deemed as an artist, so illustrators, singers, musicians, anyone who's a creator, an artistic creator, as soon as they have created the something, the work is instantly copyrighted. You don't have to fill out any forms, you don't have to register it with anything. It is instantly copyrighted at point of creation. So because of that, someone then can't go and take your work and stick it on a t-shirt and then start selling those t-shirts, because that is a copyright infringement. If they wanted to do that, they have to approach you and ask for a license to use. And then in that license, you set out a term. So it's either you can say like it's an indefinite term, or actually I'm going to make 50 t-shirts with that on, and then the artist says, okay, that's cool, yes you can do it, thumbs up, or yes you can do it, but I would like this amount of money, please. And then you draw that up, and it doesn't even have to be a complicated thing, it just needs to be on a piece of paper. And actually, if you've got an email trail where you both discuss it, you both agree, and you both say how much, and someone says yes, if you've got an email trail, that is also binding as well, and legally enforceable.
And don't be a dick.
And don't be a dick, basically, is the big thing. Yeah. But I think you do find a lot of cross-stitch designers who make designs on pieces that definitely aren't licensed.
Yeah, Yeah.
Um,
I suppose
you know,
as well, the
anything.
wild west of Etsy is a bit like that, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, very much so, very much so. And you know, anything that is, you know, cartoony, character based, quotes for things, you know, quotes, you really need to seek permission. Most people will say yes. I think a lot of authors, if you want to use like a sentence or some words, will generally just say yes and give you permission. If you don't ask permission, they'll come at you all guns blazing, as they should do. People's likenesses on stuff, that gets used a lot. I mean, how many Frida Kahlos do we need to see?
Jeez
Let's be
Louise, she's
honest.
popular, isn't
Let
she?
the poor woman live. Live in her. You know, we're waking up her spirit constantly to put her on tea towels, and I don't think that seems fair. Um, you know, the ripping off of people's identity and putting on stuff. I appreciate that there is a, you know, there's a fan element that comes into stuff, and people think that that is a loophole, that if you're doing something fan related that it's okay, but actually if they don't like it they can still come at you.
Mm.
A lot of stuff, a lot of companies let stuff slide because they don't think it doesn't negatively affect them, but if they decide that they don't like it, it can become incredibly costly for you.
And I was thinking about, you know, because you see designers where other people have riffed off their designs. Thinking about cross stitch and needlepoint in particular, you know, there'll always be. I know Satsuma Street gets ripped off by people all the time.
Yeah.
If you're a designer or a maker, like so I produce a copy of the magazine, I put it up on Readly. About 4 days later it goes up online for free download in about 3 different places around the world, but I
Yeah.
can't lose any sleep over it, because if I did lose sleep over it, it would destroy me, kind of. Do you think
Yeah,
people should just be like whatever and know that their core audiences are likely to come to them?
I think you should always have like a boilerplate cease and desist.
Right.
I personally, having worked in that field where I had to protect my photographer's work, I always think you ought to tell people. I think we kind of have a responsibility to educate people that you can't just take an image off Google and use it for whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing something and it's just for personal use, that's okay, um, generally. But you really ought to ask permission. If you're doing something and you're commercially selling it, you 100% have to ask permission.
Mm.
And I just think we've all got a slight responsibility just to stop people
Yeah.
if we can, or at least try and at least say, because for all the stuff that you let wash over you and go, oh, it's okay, I'm just going to ignore it, they'll do it to someone else and it will absolutely devastate and ruin their life. So
Mm.
sometimes
Mm.
if it's not a massive deal for you, just send out a cease and desist, and hopefully, and you can approach it in a kind way, because yes, there are arseholes out there and there are people who are desperately seeking out to try and take advantage, but there are a lot of people who just don't know better, and so
Mm.
actually you can try and approach them with kindness and get them to stop, and it's a teaching moment, and I think that's kind of important.
And if people want to get a boilerplate cease and desist, presumably
Yeah,
Googling,
so
or
easy.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so easy to do, so easy. And I just think it's funny, and it's something, the likeness of celebrities is one that really sits with me, because I saw an article a few years ago from the Frida Kahlo estate where they said that they find it really upsetting when they see her used commercially, and
Mm.
she's used everywhere on
Mm.
everything constantly all the time, and they as a family find it really distasteful and really upsetting. And I don't think people think about that sort of stuff. I think they think, oh, it's someone just in the public domain, they're ours. And actually there are people behind them, and you know, she didn't pass away all that long ago, really, in the grand scheme of things. So she has family around still who knew her, who find it upsetting when they see her likeness slapped on a t-shirt, used
Yeah.
as a Halloween
A
costume.
tea
It's,
cozy.
yeah, it's a bit grisly, really, when you start thinking about it. And there is, you know, it's nice that people want to pay homage to someone, but at the same time, they're
Yeah.
not they're not your person. They're somebody else's person.
I remember back in the day, like 2009, I was doing some collab stuff with an illustrator, just putting like their embroidery patterns out, and she was doing internet memes. So we
Mm.
had some Two Girls, One Cup and all that. And there was a Chuck Norris one. And I remember we got a cease and desist from Chuck Norris's lawyers. And I was like,
Yeah.
whoa.
surprised, took it down, but at the same time, I was like, yeah, Chuck Norris. It's just like, I got punched in the
The
face
one
by
that
the
gets
best
me all the
lawyers.
time, the woman screaming at the cat.
Yeah.
It gets used as a meme constantly. And I mean, to be fair, she actually finds the whole thing quite funny now. But the reason that she was screaming in that moment is because someone publicly had said to her on a TV show, "Oh, I know your husband beats you." Which he actually was, but they had said it publicly on a TV show, trying to blow up her life. So it was an incredibly serious moment. She had a very young child at home as well. And someone was trying to do it to score points, basically, on a TV show. And people use this as a meme. I don't think understanding the context of why she was so angry at the time. And it fast forward, he ended up killing himself, and it was the most horrific thing. But people use this stuff and consume this stuff on the internet with no permissions, taking someone else's likeness, doing stuff, and just not necessarily understanding the full extent of what they're doing.
Funny,
And it's kind of mental when you think about it.
Yeah.
Like,
And how
how
these
would we
things,
feel if someone did that to us?
yeah, when you become a legend and you
Yeah.
don't know why and the reasons are completely askew. Yeah.
It's
Well, I'm
crazy.
going to pivot the conversation on that
It's getting a bit too
mind-bending
heavy.
point. Yeah, it was good though. It was good. I enjoyed talking about the licensing stuff's interesting because it's like I've thought about it. I remember when I started out, I wanted to do like superheroes and stuff, but I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, there's no way I'm going to be able to license Marvel comic stuff because I don't have the
Yeah.
infrastructure. But I like what you were saying about, contacting authors,
Yeah.
and trying to reach out. Would you say it's better to contact the author, like go via social or something like that and try and get in there first? Or
Yeah.
should you go via a publishing company? Or
I think it's fine to approach people via socials. I think if they use their socials a lot and they're quite chatty on there, I think that's a good place to start. And then they can say to you, "I'll just contact my agent," or things like that. I think if you go directly to them a lot of the time, it makes it a simpler process.
yeah, as long as it's not like Stephen King or J.K. Rowling, feel like you're probably not going to be that successful.
Well, yeah, people like her, she who shall not be named, are part of a bigger thing. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
Warner
isn't
Brothers,
it?
I think, isn't it? Own pretty much everything. So it's the same as asking for
But in
Star
some
Wars.
ways, like you say, I mean, if you find someone who's written a book that's, that you really love and you can genuinely connect with them and say, you've inspired me to want to do this and have that meaningful conversation, it
Yeah.
probably is. And I'm sure there are ways of doing it. I think about when people email me and what responds well and what doesn't. And if you can be a bit human and a bit like, I love you in a genuine way rather than, hi, insert name.
Yeah, exactly.
I
think the personal approach is always good, and approaching people with kindness and explaining what it is that you want to do. I think that's cool. And you'd be surprised how many people are like super open to it as well. Or even if if you wanted to make kits out of something, but you don't have a huge amount of money, even going to them saying, "Listen, I don't have a huge amount of money to be able to license something properly, but could I make a donation to a charity that you like, or I can give you 50 quid, or it's something to show some gesture of of appreciating their value and their worth as well. I think is a nice way of approaching things.
Yeah. So, speaking of authors, then, what's
Yep.
your favourite book?
My favorite book. It's a book that not a lot of people know, called All My Friends Are Superheroes by Andrew Kaufman.
I know. I know All My Friends Are Addicts, which is a completely different thing.
I think that probably is a very different thing. It's a little novella. It's absolutely beautiful. It revolves around a love story between two people, but it's interspersed with their friendship group and their acquaintances who are all superheroes. But everyone's superpower is something that is really fundamental to their personality. So if there's someone who is always late for things, they develop like a superpower that is time related. So it's stuff like that. And it's really brilliant. It makes you think a lot about your personality, and if you had a superpower based on their set of rules, what your superpower would be.
And what would your superpower be?
Oh, I think it would be empathy, because the superpower kind of has to be a good thing, but it has to be a curse as well. So I think
Right.
it would be empathy based, and I think I would soak up the emotions of other people.
You're not the sort of person who'd be empathetic to things people weren't willing to share. So you'd be like, I know your pain. You'd be like, I don't have any pain. You'd be like, no, I know you do.
Yeah, no, I know you mean. No, definitely. It would definitely be stuff like that. It'd be awful. It would be dreadful.
I always say I've got powers, but they're ironic. I always think that's my power.
Yeah.
Just
So
ironic.
I highly recommend the book. It's
Mm.
it's a light read, but it's beautiful and it speaks to kind of human nature.
And is it like everyone's got a power, so it's just normal? It's not like I can leap over a
Yeah.
tree. It'd be like just normal powers and stuff.
No, it's normal.
Mm. One of my favorite superheroes. I'm going off on a tangent here.
Mm,
I recently found out actually he died, but he was in the X-Men and he was called Forget Me Not. And basically
mm,
his power was you wouldn't remember him as soon as you stopped looking at him. So he'd be there. And it's just quite a funny power because
yeah.
like you'd be in a room with him or he'd walk into a room and everyone would be like, who are you? And he'd be like, I saw you 2 minutes ago. I'm your best friend. You know, you've known me for
Yeah.
years. And there's all these bits about all these interventions that he did in superhero stories that have gone back
Yeah.
that no one remembers. So they're like, you weren't there. He was like, I totally
Mm,
just did that thing. And then the
yeah.
unfortunate thing is he's in like the X-Men story myth. And the way it works at the moment is if people die, they can be brought back to life again. And he sacrifices himself for the greater good. Nobody
Yeah.
remembers. So they don't even
Oh,
think to bring him back. The poor guy
oh
is just
no,
like
that's awful.
instantly forgettable. There's one person like Professor X and the X-Men who's like, he's set
Yeah.
a thing in his mind to go, remember Forget Me Not every day, just to remember him that he's there. He's like, everyone else is just like, I don't remember you. I'm sorry. So he spends his whole life going, hi.
That's incredible.
That's
That
good.
yeah, that's very on a par with this book.
I like
You'd
it. What was
like
it
this
called
book.
again?
All My Friends Are Superheroes by Andrew Kaufman.
Yeah,
It's
I'm going to get
beautiful.
that. Okay, so favorite film, please.
Favorite film is that's very difficult. I quite like film franchises. Like I really like Jurassic Park. I will watch that whenever that is on. I will watch the Jurassic
Okay.
Park films. But probably the one that I've watched the most is How to Make an American Quilt,
Oh,
because
interesting.
it is a beautiful film, has lots of gorgeous little vignetted love stories in it, um, has a brilliant soundtrack, and it's crafty.
Yeah.
So it's an excellent one to sit there whilst you're stitching and
Hmm.
watch, because it's got
So,
craft creds too.
like it. Have you heard that thing where they took the Jurassic Park theme tune and extended it to like an hour or whatever?
No.
It's on YouTube and it's brilliant because it's like such a rousing song anyway. And
Yeah.
this, it just builds. It's just
Oh,
amazing. You
amazing.
can listen to it, have it on in the background when you're working,
I'm
and
going to have
suddenly
that
you'll
as a
find
soundtrack
yourself
of
like,
my life
you'll just be elevated and you'll be whining. It'll be this crescendo. Someone's done it and it's so clever.
now.
Amazing.
Okay, I'm finding it.
Okay. And
Amazing.
then favorite album / band?
Album is difficult because I don't think I've ever been particularly someone who's ever listened to albums. I'm more
Okay.
of an individual song, eclectic kind of playlist person.
Mm.
But my most requested stuff on Spotify,
Hmm.
whilst I'm shouting at the robot in my house, is stuff like Ella Fitzgerald, Nat King Cole, kind of
Mm.
jazz standard stuff.
Mm. Have you ever listened to Roberta Flack?
Yes,
First time ever I saw your face. Gets me every
very good.
time.
Yeah, gets her in the
Yeah.
feels.
Her
Yeah,
first
I
album,
love
I got it
it.
on vinyl, and it was like, I wish I could remember what it's called now, but it's just like, you know, when she's, because the thing with a lot of these people, I think, like Ella and that lot, is we see them as old people because they were old people when we were around. So, like,
Yeah,
Roberta Flack's first album, when she's like in her 20s, early Nina Simone, all of that stuff, you know, when they were like
yeah,
firebrand, phenomenal talents. That's the stuff you need to look at. That's the hot shit.
yeah, yeah. I love anything like that. I think is fabulous,
Nice.
and I
Yeah,
think
I
it's
do.
because my gran used to listen to a lot of it, and I used to hang out with my gran quite a lot.
Yeah. I feel like Christmas has to have at least a Nat King Cole in it at some point, so you're
Oh
there.
yeah, for sure.
Chestnuts roasting and all that.
Yeah,
Okay, and
that's one
then
of the things I love about old songs being recycled into Christmas adverts, as I can sit there and Shazam them, and I'm like, right, that's going on the playlist.
yeah, definitely, definitely. In fact, here's a pro tip: if you ever want to buy now, that's what I call Christmas. Buy it now in the summer when it's about £3,
It's a good
because obviously
idea.
then it goes up. And I do that, and we've got that on vinyl. And I've got a couple of other Christmassy albums on vinyl. Ronnie Spector, I think, and I've got a
Hmm.
Motown Christmas album as well. And you just put those on for because you feel like the nostalgia is the bit where it all
Yeah,
kind of fits in nicely, doesn't it? I'm
I
not so
do.
sure about
I do
Lad
pride
Baby.
myself on my Christmas playlists.
I seem to remember you as well, always having some pretty unusual taste in music. I feel like over the years, you've thrown some interesting objects out there.
Yeah, I always try and give you like the most obscure stuff that I've listened to when you ask for suggestions.
Yeah, it's true. Sometimes I really need, because of the collab playlist on every X Stitch magazine, and then we've got like the mega playlist as well. What's quite
Mm,
funny is I think there's only been like 3 times when the same songs come up. Because if I add them to the playlist and it's already on there, it tells me. But there's only
yeah,
been like 3 songs. So I mean, there's about bloody 15 hours worth of music on there if anyone wants to listen.
it's impressive.
Right. Last
Yep.
question. What is the most interesting thing that no one really knows about you?
But this was kind of interesting. So a lot of people saw me, but no one knew it was me, if that makes sense.
Mm,
I was part of the Anthony Gormley takeover of the fourth plinth in Trafalgar Square,
okay.
and it landed. Everyone got, you could apply for it, and everyone got 2 hours,
Mm,
and you could stand up there. And I think it was basically no violence, no nudity, no drinking, but other than that, you could do whatever you wanted. And I put mine to a vote, and I raised money for charity. So whichever suggestion got the most amount of money was what I would do. So I ended up dressed as Where's Wally on the fourth plinth for 2 hours on the bank holiday August weekend at lunchtime. So I had like the prime slot out of all of it. And so the amount of tour buses that went past and made me part of the
where's
tour
Wally?
for that 2 hours was hilarious. And it was kind of, I was interviewed, photographed, put in the archive of the National Portrait Gallery. But the most bizarre thing that happened is Martin Hanford, who was the creator and illustrator of Where's Wally, happened to be walking through Trafalgar Square, knew nothing of
No,
the plinth,
no.
let alone would ever imagine that I would be stood up there, happened to walk past with his kids. His kids spotted me. So as I was being taken down with the cherry picker, I saw this guy talking to my friend, and I thought, okay, she's bumped into someone she knows. And then by the time I'd come out, having changed and come back out, she said, "Oh, this guy's giving me his email address for you." And I thought, okay, well that's weird. And it turned out it was him. So he was really touched that I had been up there as Where's Wally, and he got me to email him, and his publisher sent me this massive box of like t-shirts and jigsaw puzzles and books, and he signed this beautiful book for me with a lovely message. And yeah, it was just one of those bizarre, surreal moments.
That's amazing. You know you're in the right place when that stuff happens, right?
Yeah, it was a proper universe conspired to get us to meet thing. It was very cool.
That is. I've had a couple of those kind of moments. There was one where we were walking along a canal and a boat called Flora pulled up. And we were like, wouldn't it be funny if a boat called Annie pulled up? Literally a minute later, a boat called Annie pulled up.
That's
Melon
amazing.
twisting. Got a photo of the girls next to them as well. And I
That's
spent the rest of the
brilliant.
day, I was just a bit span out. You know, when you're
Yeah.
just like, hang on, have I just hit a nexus
Should
of
I play the
reality?
lottery now?
Yeah, honestly, that's a great story. Ah,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that. If people want to find out about you,
Yes.
where should they go?
Instagram, really. I'm kind of everywhere, but Instagram is my most active socials. So I'm at the Maker's Marks. So make sure you put in both the S's. And I'm on Instagram, and every Monday you'll get a new exciting stitch, and all the old ones have all been recorded in story highlights and stuff. And my DMs are always open for any stitch based questions that people want to ask me. And I have people from all around the world send me pictures and ask for help on various bits and pieces. And it is my absolute pleasure to do so, because I love to stitch enable people.
And I believe you've also got a email newsletter that people should sign up to.
I do. I have an email newsletter. It's on my website, which again, if you Google the Maker's Marks or Emma Homent, that pops up. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the front page, you can sign up to my newsletter, which is about to get a super fancy makeover. And if you like the sound of my book, there is a little taster of it on Amazon. And it's available on all online bookshops across the world, thankfully. And in September, they're bringing out another version of it where they're making a card books. So it's a little card pack that is coming out.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. And that was a bloody clever idea. Well done there.
It's a really good idea. So 50 of the stitches have been turned into cards. So they're quite good if you like stitching on the go. I'm a big fan of taking a project out to a cafe or wherever I'm traveling. So you can just grab like a couple of cards that you're working on for a project and pop them in your bag.
Genius maneuver, that one. Genius maneuver.
Pretty good, isn't it?
Emma?
Yes?
Thanks for having a needle exchange with me.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Thanks for joining me on another Needle Exchange. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'd love to hear from you, so feel free to email hello@needle.exchange, that's NEEDL.exchange, with any thoughts, comments or feedback. And if you want to keep up with all the news, sign up to the Needle Exchange mailing list at bit.ly/Needle Exchange. See you next time. Thanks for joining me on another Needle Exchange. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'd love to hear from you, so feel free to email hello@needle.exchange, that's NEEDL.exchange, with any thoughts, comments or feedback. And if you want to keep up with all the news, sign up to the Needle Exchange mailing list at bit.ly/Needle Exchange. See you next time.